Hello, welcome back to the next section of James and the Giant Peach. I cannot believe that we're already on chapters 15 and 16 today. We're just about halfway, not quite, but just about halfway through the book. If you remember from last reading, James has been in the peach with all of the new friends that he met, including the ladybug, the centipede, the green grasshopper, the spider, the silkworm, I think I said all of them. The earthworm. So we've met all of those characters. He's inside the peach with them. And in the last chapter, after everyone woke up after sleeping a night, James found that the centipede was on the top of the peach, biting the stem to let the peach free. And right at the end of the chapter, the peach started to move and roll. So we're going to find out down the hill. So we're going to find out what happens to the peach and to all of the friends inside the peach as the peach starts to roll down the hill and they start their adventure. So we're going to start with chapter 15. The vocabulary word that I want you to listen for today is the word gaping. Gaping. If you hear that word, or when you hear that word, write and tell me what you think that word might mean based on what we hear in the story. And the question that I want you to answer today is simply, what do you think is going to happen next? So I want your prediction. What do you think is going to happen next in the story? So please make sure to use complete sentences. Most of you are writing to me on Google Classroom, which is excellent. Complete sentences underneath. And when you do that, I will add a tally to your name for that letter home. So we are going to start with chapter 15 today and see what happens. Outside in the garden, at that very moment, Aunt Sponge and Aunt Spiker had just taken their places at their front gate, each with a bunch of tickets in their hand, and the first stream of early morning sightseers were visible in the distance, climbing up the hill to view the peach. "We shall make a fortune today," Aunt Spiker was saying. "Just look at all those people." "I wonder what became of that horrid little boy of ours last night," Aunt Sponge said. "He never did come back in, did he?" "He probably fell down in the dark and broke his leg," Aunt Spiker said. "Or his neck, maybe," Aunt Sponge said hopefully. Cool. "Just wait till I get my hands on him," Aunt Spiker said, waving her cane. "He'll never want to stay out all night again by the time I've finished with him. Good gracious me, what's that awful noise?" Both women swung around to look. The noise, of course, had been caused by the giant peach crashing through the fence that surrounded it, and now, gathering speed every second, it came rolling across the garden toward the place where Aunt Sponge and Aunt Spiker were standing. They gaped. They screamed. They started to run. They panicked. They both got in each other's way. They began pushing and jostling, and each of them was thinking only about saving herself. Aunt Sponge, the fat one, tripped over a box that she'd brought along to keep the money in and fell flat on her face. Aunt Spiker immediately tripped over Aunt Sponge and came down on top of her. They both lay on the ground, fighting and clawing and yelling and struggling frantically to get up again. But before they could do this, the mighty peach was upon them. There was a crunch, and then there was silence. The peach rolled on, and behind it, Aunt Sponge and Aunt Spiker lay ironed out upon the grass as flat, thin, and lifeless as a couple of paper dolls cut out of a picture book. That's the end of chapter 15. That was a quick chapter, but oh my goodness, Aunt Sponge and Aunt Spiker are no more. They were just flattened by the peach, which in my opinion is not a terrible thing. They were not very pleasant women. All right, we are going to move on to chapter 16. Oh, you know what? I don't think I reread the paragraph that had our vocabulary word in it, so let me go ahead and do that. Okay. All right. The noise, of course, had been caused by the giant peach crashing through the fence that surrounded it, and now, gathering speed every second, it came rolling across the garden towards the place where Aunt Sponge and Aunt Spiker were standing. They gaped. They screamed. They started to run. They panicked. So remember, that word is gaped. All right, chapter 16. And now the peach had broken out of the garden and was over the edge of the hill, rolling and bouncing down the steep slope at a terrible pace. Faster and faster and faster it went, and the crowds of people who were climbing up the hill suddenly caught sight of this terrible monster plunging down upon them, and they screamed and scattered to the right and left as it went hurtling by. At the bottom of the hill, it charged across the road, knocking over a telegraph pole and flattening 2 parked automobiles as it went by. Then it rushed madly across about 20 fields, breaking down all the fences and hedges in its path. It went right through the middle of a herd of fine Jersey cows, and then through a flock of sheep, and then through a paddock full of horses, and then through a yard full of pigs, and soon the whole countryside was a seething mass of panic-stricken animals stampeding in all directions. The peach was still going at a tremendous speed, with no sign of slowing down, and about a mile farther on it came to a village. Down the main street of the village it rolled, with people leaping frantically out of its path right and left, and at the end of the street it went crashing right through the wall of an enormous building and out the other side, leaving 2 gaping round holes in the brickwork. That's our word again, so I'm going to read that paragraph. Down the main street of the village it rolled, with people leaping frantically out of its path right and left, and at the end of the street it went crashing right through the wall of an enormous building and right out the other side, leaving 2 gaping round holes in the brickwork. This building happened to be a famous factory where they made chocolate, and almost at once a great river of warm, melted chocolate came pouring out of the holes in the factory wall. A minute later, this brown, sticky mess was flowing through every street in the village, oozing under the doors of houses and into people's shops and gardens. Children were wading in it up to their knees, and some were even trying to swim in it, and all of them were sucking it into their mouths in great greedy gulps and shrieking with joy. But the peach rushed on across the countryside, on and on and on, leaving a trail of destruction in its wake. Cowsheds, stables, pigsties, barns, bungalows, hayricks, and anything that got in its way went toppling over like a ninepin. An old man sitting quietly beside a stream had his fishing rod whisked out of his hands, and it went dashing by, and a woman called Daisy Entwistle was standing so close to it as it passed that she had the skin taken off the tip of her long nose. Would it ever stop? Why should it? A round object will always keep on rolling as long as it's on a downhill slope, and in this case, the land sloped downhill all the way until it reached the ocean, the same ocean that James had begged his aunts to be allowed to visit the day before. Well, perhaps he was going to visit now. The peach was rushing closer and closer to it every second, and closer also to the towering white cliffs that came first. These cliffs are the most famous in the whole of England, and they are hundreds of feet high. Below them, the sea is deep and cold and hungry. Many ships have been swallowed up and lost forever on this part of the coast, and all the men who were in them as well. Let me show you a picture. This is the chocolate factory and the chocolate all spilling out. And that might be a fun day before it causes lots of chaos and havoc. The peach was now only 100 yards away from the cliff. Now 50, now 20, now 10, now 5. And when it reached the edge of the cliff, it seemed to leap up into the sky and hang there suspended for a few seconds, still turning over and over in the air. Then it began to fall. Down, down, down. Smack! It hit the water with a colossal splash and sank like a stone. But a few seconds later, up it came again, and this time up it stayed, floating serenely upon the surface of the water. That is the end of chapter 16. Wow. So a lot actually kind of happened in those 2 chapters with the Peach. We didn't hear anything from the characters that were inside. I can only imagine how they're feeling right now. But the Peach rolled off the hill, crushed Aunt Sponge and Aunt Spiker, rolled through the entire town, all the way down the hill, off the cliffs, into the ocean, and is now floating in the ocean. So please make sure you tell me what you think the word gaping means. Please tell me what you think is going to happen next. I would like to hear your predictions. Use a complete sentence. And I can't wait to hear what you guys think will happen. It's a really exciting story. It gets really good after this, too. All right, I'll talk to you guys soon.